I'd like to introduce two founding members of the STOL competition in Microsoft Flight Simulator, Burstix and Tom Wolf. Welcome, gentlemen.
Morning, Howard. Thanks for having us.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Let's start with Burstix and find out more. So let's ask, what is STOL and the STOL drag competitions?
So eStol is it's basically a competition that we hold within the simulator, and what we're really trying to do with eStol is to we want to make it as close as possible to the real life STOL competitions that that Tom holds with National STOL. So basically, the goal is we want to see actual actual pilots compete in our competitions, which we have a few. One of the guys is Blitz. He's a younger guy. His name is Blitz. That's what he goes by in the sim. And I think one day we can even see him possibly in the national STOL competitions, competing in the real thing. So it's basically just a representation of what they do in real life, and we do that in the sim, and it's very accurate. It's very close to what they do. Aside for a few things.
Wow, that would be awesome to actually see the real competitors who know how it's done for real actually do it in the sim. Because most of us are just learning by watching and then trying it. So to see one that actually knows how to do it, that would be interesting. Do either one of you fly in real life?
I do. I fly in real life.
So you can relate to what happens there. And have you ever done STOL competitions or STOL attempts?
I've never done STOL competitions. I've only done short takeoff and landing on my own, paved runway at, my home airport
Right.
in Georgia. But I've never tried to compete in our competitions. I leave that for the pros.
I would think you have to have an element of nerve-wracking element that you don't mind. It would be a bit of pressure, that's for sure. And I've witnessed a few of those. So have you guys been to actual STOL drag competitions or real ones that you've actually witnessed, you've seen?
So I host the National STOL Series, actually one of the founding owners of the company. And we started in 2020 in Gainesville, Texas, when it was about 45 degrees and raining. That was our first event we ever did. And since then, we've done about 18 events all over the United States. And in each event, I'm there setting up, broadcasting, and hosting the whole competition for all the pilots to attend.
That's amazing. That's firsthand stuff right there. You're right in it. That's cool. So that answers the question about your role in this endeavor. I was going to come to you next, Tom, and just ask you what your role in this endeavor is, and you're right in it, full feet. So that is
and
amazing.
Vertex came to me and said, "Hey, this is we have a great opportunity here to partner National STOL and BurtixTV to partner up and do an eSTOL competition, bringing the National STOL components to the sim and vice versa to make it as real as possible for simmers and people like flying at home."
So that gives it a sense of real. Then, so you would have the same rules? Is that you would know what the rules are and try to follow them the same? How does it differ from the real competition to the sim?
Well, the rules that we hold, we use the nationalstol.com website. We use the rules, right from there. So the rules are very much the same. And to be honest with you, there's not really much different than maybe classes and things like that. They differ a bit in the sim. Because in real life, they're all flying their own planes and they're modifying them. And, National STOL has different rules about classes, and, unlimited class can have, more modifications and things like that. Some of the other classes they've, switched over time. So we kind of have the same thing in the sim, where certain planes are in certain classes, but it is a little bit different. But as far as like scratching, which is, if you land short of the line, if you nose over, those kind of things, disqualifications, measurements, all those things, those are the same thing that, we get those rules right from nationalstol.com. So that's about as real as it gets.
So let's talk about the classes for a second if we can.
Yeah, right.
And there's currently 5 classes plus a rookie class. And as Bursic mentioned, we have the unlimited class. And that's the fire-breathing dragons of airplanes. I mean, they're so fast. They take off in 12 feet, 6 feet.
Wow.
It's insane. 400 horsepower turbocharged airplanes. Or you have the other end of that, which is super light aircraft. like Dan Reynolds in the Chinook, is so light. He takes off in about 12 feet, 15 feet, with not a very big Rotax motor on the back. So that's the unlimited class. And those are the ones that are just absolutely killer airplanes. Then you have the sport class, which is our smallest airplanes by weight. And so under 1,320 pounds, that's going to be your J3s, your Rams S7s, the other types of smaller airplanes. Kit Foxes are in that class too. And the other one that's really common in that class is the Carbon Cub SS, because it's a smaller airplane built for light sport. And that's generally going to be in that class too. And they do really, really well. And then as you move up to the next class, it's the Adventure class, which is the bigger airplanes, the bigger Cubs, the FX3s for Carbon Cub, the Legend, MOAX, the Super Cubs, the other types of airplanes like that are bigger, more horsepower, more weight. The other class we have is the backcountry class, and that was typically known as our light touring class, but we renamed it this year the backcountry. The backcountry class is the Husky aircraft, also the Cessna 170 Bravos, the 172s. That's that aircraft. It's generally 2 to 4 place aircraft that are bigger, more meant for speed, more for touring than they would be for backcountry operations. But they're awesome at it. I mean, they're taking off in less than 100 feet a lot of times and landing similarly. So the total scores are 250 feet or so. And then the last class we have before we go to the rookies is the touring class. And those are the big airplanes. Those are the 182s, the 205s, the MAL M7s, M9s, and anything else that's big, generally more than 2,400 pounds aircraft. And they're massive airplanes, but they do crazy work. I mean, we had Brandon Korn take off on 198 feet. We had him take off 136 feet. That's a Cessna 205. That's a huge airplane. And then our last class, we actually built this year for the first time, is the rookie class. And we wanted a way to bring in new people, new competitors to the competition without a lot of pressure. As you mentioned, Howard, it can be a really high stress environment and high pressure environment. So the rookie class is that low stress class. You come in, bring whatever you got, whatever airplane you have, let's run in this class. And the only person who can't run again in that class is the winner of that class. So if you win the rookie class, you can't go back in the rookie class. And the idea there is that you move up to your standard class, your typical class that you would then jump into the touring class or backcountry class, etc. So that's been very, very, very successful as we can go on. People learn how we do stuff. We walk them through everything very slowly and take their time through it all, so they can really practice their skills and get better at competing. Because not everyone's obviously been in the competition environment before.
That's like a promotion then, right? You if you're the winner in the rookie class, that's it. You're not a rookie
It
anymore.
is,
Right?
but that's exactly it. It's a forced promotion, because we have people that want to drag their feet and say, I want to be in the rookie class forever.
Right.
So I'm not comfortable with it yet. But we force them to go say, hey, you're the best one, you're going up. So they go up to the standard class. But honestly, it's so laid back that you don't have to start in rookie class. You can start in any class you want to. But the guys that start in rookie class really enjoy the rookie class that first time to get used to the air bosses, get used to how we run the competitions.
That's cool. That is great. So that really explains it well. That's good to hear. That's something that a lot of people will want to know about, how that all works. Now, if we can talk about, because you've got the different classes now, if we can just talk about the marking part of it, it's all about, by the looks of the field and the way you mark it out, it's all about how far it takes them to land from that starting point where you've got that marker, that yellow, red kind of marker.
I can explain how it works in real life, and if Vertex wants to explain how it works in a sim, it may be the best way we can handle this. But so in real life, we're drawing out a 450-foot long runway, 125 feet wide, and that runway has a start-finish line, much like a goal line for football. And so that 0 marker line is your start-finish line. As the competitor pulls up to that line and stops on that line, both those wheels either have to be on or after the line. They can't have any wheels before the line. As they roll down the runway and lift off, our line judges on the side of the runway are marking that distance of where the wheel left the ground. If they go down another 10 feet and touch down again, then they mark that distance. So the takeoff is always the shortest time it took you to leave the ground. Then, after they go around the pattern, come back around to land, they have to land on or after the white line. If they land before the white line, the whole round for them is a scratch. Does not count.
Wow.
Their takeoff doesn't count. Their landing doesn't count. So they have to land on or after the white line. And that's to simulate that you're in the backcountry, on a sandbar. If you land short of the sandbar, you're in the water, and now nothing counts because you're in the water. You crashed your airplane. If you're on a bluff, same way. So our white line is our start finish line, and we have to land on or after the line. Now, once you touch down after the line or on the line, even that's fine. The moment you get fully stopped, that's when your landing distance is scored, and that's easy because you're no longer moving, and we can mark that distance. So we add up your takeoff, we add up your landing, and that becomes your round score. Your round score goes with you the entire 3 or 5, 6 rounds, however many rounds we do. And that round score is, we're looking for the lowest score in your class. And that's how we score our competitions.
Wow, that's amazing. And so I can see how that's easier to mark the ones that stop, because you can measure when they're stopped. The one that's leave the ground, you really got to be closely watching. So do you have people on the sides of these airplanes, really close to these airplanes, watching those lines, or you just have people with binoculars from the distance?
No, we do. We have people, volunteers that come to all our events, and we obviously welcome any volunteers that want to join us at our events. But we have volunteer line judges. They go out, they stand on the edge, and they're watching the airplane. And so, generally speaking, for the unlimited class, all those line judges, all 8 of them or so, are within the first 25 feet to watch that first 25-foot takeoff. But the touring class, they'll be spread out between the 200 and 300-foot markers, or 400 feet. And they watch, and as that plane takes off, they're looking at a spot on the ground where the tire left the ground, and then they go up and line up against the ruler we have. We have a tape measure on the side of the runway. We also mark it off with paint, and we have sign markers as well. And so using those markers, they say, okay, that was 425 feet, or that was 310 feet.
Wow.
And that's their takeoff score.
That's amazing. So they're right up close and personal to those planes.
They are.
They're watching closely. So how does that differ, Burstix, from the STOL version of it? Is it similar? But it must be harder. You can't put people on the field and have them stand there with tape measures, right?
Right. So we can in a way. So I'll touch on that, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about the classes too and where we differ there. Okay. So in the STOL competitions, we started out. So I guess we'll start here. So Anov is the original guy that I started doing this with, as far as like before it became anything other than just trying to have a competition, just very casually. So, and as far as the sceneries is what I mean. So Anov had a scenery on flightsim.to. It's a freeware scenery, and it's called Johnson's Farm. There was a STOL landing strip there, and I saw it, and I was like, man, there's nothing, there's a few things, but nothing really like this that was so well marked out and things like that. So I knew Anov a little bit. He had helped me do some liveries and things like that. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this and get some information about it. So in talking to him, he told me, hey, I've got it measured out like perfectly. He's got little rulers that you place on the ground when he's making the scenery. And so, I mean, everything is marked out really well, but there are a few things that differ. So in Tom's national STOL competitions, they have one white line. Well, we have a red line, and then we have a thicker white line from the inside of that.
Yeah. At the start, right?
Yes, at the start. Yep. And so from the outside, or I guess when you're landing in, that white line is going to be, we actually go 600 feet, and it's still, I'm pretty sure it's about 125 feet wide, like the national STOLs. Why is it longer? Well, that's something that we have to ask Anov, but I think it's a little longer because of the sim. There's some people that are maybe brand new to aviation, altogether, right? So we don't typically have any 600-foot takeoffs, but I mean, I've seen a few go past the 600-foot mark. Why do we add the red line? Well, the red line is to help the judges, actually. It's a lot easier to see in real life when a tire hits the ground before. It can still be difficult. And if you've, watched any of the national STOL competitions, you can see they do replays and things like that. We do replays as well. but it's a lot easier to see depending on the camera angle that the person, was that the judge was, angled from. So with that red line, we added that in after the fact, and it just made it a lot easier to see when someone actually did scratch. And then the white line is, a little bit thicker than what you would see at a national stole competition. And that's, again, to help the judges in to making sure that everything is accurate, because we want to make sure it is, again, as close to the real thing as possible. So, but all the feet markers, everything like that is going to be the same thing that you would see in the national stole competitions. It's scored exactly the same way. There is a little trick that we use as judges with Parallel 42, which is one of the sponsors of our big kickoff competition here at the end of, here sometime in October. There's a tool that's called Flow, and I have Flow Pro as a streamer. It's a great tool, so I definitely have that and use it. Well, in there's a setting that you can turn the grass low, high, etc., and it's very quick. So the judges will actually turn the grass to low, so there is some grass visible in the sim, but it's very low, and that helps so much to see where the takeoff is. The landings, just like in real life, they're still very easy to see as long as you're watching for the scratch. So those are a couple of little things that differ. We can turn the grass down. I don't think Tom has a way to turn the grass down in real life.
Get up the lawnmower.
Right.
That's what we do. We mow the lawn. We mow the runway really short.
Yeah.
And it gets really dusty.
Almost.
But it does. That's our trick. We just can't do it on the fly like he can.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So almost like a golf fairway, right? Get those lawnmowers out that get cut really low. Yeah. And then hope it doesn't rain. So that's interesting on how it differs in the e-stole competition. And then same with seeing where, you can use the drone cam in Flight Simulator to go in close. So, there's no worry about being too close. You could probably get right in there and see the tire actually stop, and then you can actually look at the measurement. So that actually is a better advantage, because you can zoom right in there. That is a great tool. Now, do you use the Flow add-in that measures their landing feet per minute? Do you ever use that for any of these things?
I use it on stream. I don't use it all the time. Some people use it all the time, and there's a bot that will tell you. I guess that brings it to your Twitch stream, and they can guess. And I use that sometimes, but I like it when, for me, like the landing rate thing, I like it when I'm flying a plane that I don't know, and I want to just see, how my landings are, things like that. I think I use it more in that sense, because for whatever reason, I can't get my stream to do, I cannot get them to do the landing rate guesses, I guess. Even the same people that are in other communities and they do it in other communities, for whatever reason, nobody does it in my stream. So I run it for personal, like when I want to see what my landing rates are. But it is a great tool, and I'm glad Edson actually added that in recently to the main Flow tool.
It's funny that you mentioned landing rate. If you watch our competition, there's two strategies. And the one strategy is basically high landing rate. I'm going to come over the line, about 10 feet off the line before the line, and cut my power, cut my flaps. Basically, they lift up their flaps and they go to zero. And what they're doing is they're losing all their lift they have, and they're basically going to plant the runway at the start finish line. So you can watch that strategy play out. And it's a more dangerous strategy as a competitor, because you're more likely to scratch if you time it wrong. It's not dangerous to the airplane, and the suspension they have, the tires they have, it soaks up the landing. But that's the one strategy. So their landing rates can be a lot higher because they're just dropping out of the sky at 8 feet, 6 feet. The other strategy we see all the time in the competition is they drag it in. They're doing all the way down the runway. Before the runway, they're at 4 or 5 feet out the ground, and then as they hit the line, they're dropping from 2 feet or 1 foot. So it's a lot different, and they just kind of drag the different styles into the competition. It's very interesting to see.
So they're just using pitch to get those wheels back down on the ground with that 2 or 3 feet.
Correct.
Yeah. So that
And we see that
and a lot of the guys will.
They want to creep up on the line, right?
A lot of guys will drop the flaps. Some of them will. They're all manual. Most of the airplanes have manual flaps,
right?
So they're dumping all 40 degrees of flaps at once as they hit that line. Some of them some of them have electric flaps, and they'll keep flaps in or dump them last minute. But it's slower when it's electric flaps. So
sure,
that's a limitation of the airplane. And so that all plays into how they drag it in or not. But a lot of those guys are either 2 feet off the ground and almost like a stall, waiting to stall right on the break. That way, when they do stall, they're over the start finish line and they just basically touch down.
So it's a timing thing for sure. Yeah, and as you know, in a 172, electric flaps take about 20 seconds to go from full flaps to all the way up. That's not going to work. So you definitely want that bar. Some of them have it up on the ceiling and you can pull them, and some of them have it on the floor. But that's an instant flap removal, right? You can also use that, I bet.
It is.
Tell me about this. Whether do they use that also when they're taking off to make that shorter? Some of them add a flap in right before they bounce, right? Before they take off.
They add as much as they can. They'll the straight tail 172s, the early models 56, 57, I think 58s, 59s, all have the manual flaps. And some of the 60s, I think they converted back to manual flaps for the ease. And I think some guys have taken the 70s and stuff and converted those back as well for the STC. But they want the manual flaps because you're right. As they're rolling down the runway, full power, they're not looking at the gauges. They're not looking at the speed, the airspeed, because the airspeed won't even be alive. And they're waiting for that moment. They think the airplane can fly. They pull back on that yoke. They pull the flaps from 0 to 20 to 0 to 30 just to get a burst of power vertically instead of horizontally. And that airflow pushing down is enough to put them in a ground effect. And then you'll see them kind of hover at like 5 feet as they get out of accelerate into ground effect and get out of ground effect with the flaps going back up again. So they do use manual flaps on takeoff too.
Fascinating. That is fascinating. Can we recreate that in the flight simulator? Can we use that same technique and it works?
Yeah, very well, actually.
And they can stay in ground effect for both of you. Can they stay in ground effect as long as they want until they gain enough speed to be able to climb out? Doesn't matter?
Yeah.
All that matters is they're off the ground, right? Yeah, they're off the ground. Oh, that's cool. So
yeah, and basically that's the same thing in the sim. I mean, you have a lot of our sim pilots. I mean, there's some people who are really good at STOL and sim. And again, some of them are actual, they're pilots in real life. And it's very, very, very similar where you see, people starting with no flaps and then they drop all the flaps on takeoff when they feel like they've got flying speed. And, depending on what plane you see, the gravel by Got Friends, that usually just, you're shooting straight up once you get off the ground. I mean, there's so much power. And that's like an unlimited class plane where we've put the gravel, but it's a very fun plane to fly STOL competitions in.
Do you see airplanes like the Zenith CH-701? Do you see stuff like that are actually made for STOL landings? Do you see those in your competitions?
Absolutely. That one is that. So that what that reminds me of is when Tom was a few minutes ago talking about Dan in the Chinook. That's what the CH-701 really reminds me of, even though they do have CH-701s in, the real national STOL competitions. We don't see a group of them. We see usually one or two guys that'll be using that, during one of our competitions. And that is really, we put that in the unlimited class because it is light and it really, in the sim, you can really, really land it short. Now, we've had people take off in the CH-701 with the tail on the ground in the sim, something that they learned from watching real life competitions. Now, I don't know if this happened at one of the national STOL competitions or what, but we had one of our guys who's a young guy. He's a pilot in real life, and he tried that in the CH-701 where he had the tail right on the ground and basically took off straight up into the air. So you'd have to ask Tom if that where he might have seen that before, but Dog's seen that. Dogmatic is one of the guys too. In the sim, and that's the guy that tried this, and he said, "Yeah, I've seen that from a real life competition."
There's 4 or 5 701, 750 pilots, 750 STOL by Zenith that we've seen in their competitions. 701s, I think I'm going to butcher it, but John Humbert was a 701, Sheldon Hetherington in 750, Justin Tisdale in 750, and Jan Eggenfeller in a 750 as well. And so, as Bursick said, there's the ability with that airplane to kind of drag the tail because it is a nose wheel airplane. But if you bring the center of gravity back, that tail's so flat that it will basically sit on the ground easily. So Jan in Central Florida Classic in 2021 actually, yeah, that's right, 2021, came along and put his tail on the ground as he pulled up to the line, his nose wheel about 3 feet in the air, and then applied power, trying to get more angle on that prop disc to get it more off the ground faster. And it wasn't too successful. It did get him off the ground about, I think, 30 or 40 feet, but it wasn't crazy short because of the drag, I believe, on the tail dragging against the ground. There was no like wheel on the tail or like that. But typically, Justin Tisdale in the Zenith will pull up to the line, and the moment he thinks he can fly, he's pulling back on that yoke. And because there's so much distance between the ground and the tail, typically in level flight, he can get that AOA really high and get off the ground real quickly. And then he'll level off as soon as he hits like 2-3 feet and basically try to get in the ground effect and take off from there, or like accelerate from there.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, it's an all metal plane, so it can probably take that kind of punishment. But you guys must be taking into account the fact that his tail is touching the ground still. So it's got to be the whole plane is off the ground.
No,
right? No, it's wheels only.
no, we wheels only. It's only the main wheel, and that's important because you can actually drag the tail wheel if you wanted to. We see that on landings a lot of times. The tail wheel airplanes will drag the tail wheel before they touch down. But the problem is it's cantilever. So if you touch the tail wheel down and you don't have it under control, that front nose, those two main gear are going to touch down before the line because it pushes you forward and pushes your angle forward and down. So it's kind of a trade-off, and it's kind of a risk that they take is that they touch the tail wheel before the line in like a high AOA approach. It's going to push them forward. So they can time it right. It works perfectly. But we don't count the tail wheel for takeoffs or for landings. It's only for and same for the nose gear for that matter. If the nose gear touched down before the line for landing, you're gonna have a bad day, but we wouldn't count that as a scratch. It has to be the main gear.
Had to be main. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. So to both of you, what now you have this Twitch stream, Burstix, and so what are you providing on your Twitch stream to recreate this, this skill testing flying endeavor in Microsoft Flight Simulator? So you have multiple cameras, multiple screens, or how do you actually pull this off? Without getting into too much technical difficulty, but can you recreate the same kind of atmosphere as they do on the real National STOL?
So that is what so the kickoff competition, which is going to be hopefully here in the beginning of October, we'll have a solid date here soon. We're just waiting on a couple people that are volunteering to make sure of availabilities. But the kickoff event, which is going to have all the sponsors and all the giveaways and things like that for our league kickoff. That one is going to be, you're going to see similar to what you see on like a national STOL competition. You're going to see that level of production, and we're working towards that. So we do have cameramen and things like that, which they're going to be using drones in the sim, but we do have that, and Tom is providing the production on this with something similar to what he does for National STOL, which he runs all the production on that as well. Well, with a team, I imagine, and that big trailer you see on site. But yeah, so that's going to be very closely. But for now, about weekly, usually we do it on Sundays because that's when we have most people available to help. We have very laid back practice competitions. So that is just something that I do separately on a stream to, get the word out about the STOL competitions. We see a ton of viewership on those days. We see, to whatever my stream is normally, we tend to see a little more viewership on those days. We see new people every single time. We see people that couldn't even land, in less than 100 feet. And all of a sudden we're seeing those people, compete and place in these competitions. So the practice events that we've been holding are doing something, and everybody there is willing to help, whether it be in the Twitch chat, whether it be me, because I study this stuff. I'm not a professional, but I study this stuff, and I know a lot of the techniques that Tom has mentioned and things like that from real life, and almost all of them transfer over. So these practice events are designed to really just get everybody the word about STOL, and then to teach people that want to know. And I want to stress how laid back they are. We do take score, but that is also to for me to practice as well, for the camera people to practice, for the judges to practice. And that's how we figured all these techniques about the grass, taking the grass down lower on the setting. and adding in the red line, adding in the little foot markers that we have to make scoring easier in the sim. So all these little things over time for us, for our production of it, is helping us learn, and then it's also helping everybody learn. But very laid back, even though we do keep score, and everybody is invited. So anybody that can go to Twitch TV, and watch our stream, you're more than welcome to come and join those competitions, the practice ones. And we'll be doing them weekly up until the kickoff event, and then still possibly even after the kickoff event, we'll hold preliminary exhibition matches, is what we call them.
Well, that answers my question about how can people learn, and that's perfect right there. We can come to your channel on the Sundays and do some learning all along for weeks on end until they get the confidence to be able to jump in and say, I'm in. It's going to take a few times for them to build some confidence, that's for sure. So let me ask the question. So it looks like it's open to anybody who flies Microsoft Flight Simulator can join in, as long as they have Microsoft Flight Simulator, right? And they can just multiplayer into your environment, wherever it is in the world, and probably at Johnson's Farm, right? Is that what I understand for practicing?
So most of the practice has been done at Johnson's Farm, but Tom has actually provided us with the site maps for what he uses to set up his competitions. So Anov and Stoyer now is so Anov does a lot of the 3D modeling for the sceneries. He's worked for done some work for quite some big developers that a lot of people know. So he knows what he's doing as far as scenery creation, and then recently he's got into this 3D development. So we've got all of our sponsors. I mean, if you've not seen the Music City event, that's the first one that we released on FlightSim.to. It's a freeware. It's the first one that we released that is designed from the sitemap that Tom uses to set his event up. And so Anov does the 3D modeling. He brings in so all the tents and the signs, and he's got a lot of things that he's working on too. Like he's recreating Tom's trailer where Tom does his production. So if you check that scenery out, you'll see it's very close to the real life event, which you'll find on YouTube, National STOL's YouTube, and you can compare the two, and they're very close. So that's something that we will continue to do. And it's very unique to our eSTOL National STOL collaboration here, is making it even more realistic.
To jump in for a minute, big shout out to Anov. I mean, he's a master designer, and he can take anything you send him, and he'll create a 3D model of it and put it in a sim. So as Versus mentioned, he took my production trailer that was given to us by USA Trailers Direct, and he put this in the sim. And it has our logos on the side of it. And it has the windows we use for our announcers. Everything that you would see in real life, you are in the sim and you can see it, which is cool, because the whole point of this, in my opinion, is to make it look as real as the real thing. Right. And to make someone who wants to fly in a sim practice in a sim, then they can feel comfortable enough as a pilot to go out and actually do this thing in their airplane when they get comfortable with that and to practice that. And so our goal, at least my goal, is to make the sim events, the STOL events for National STOL, as similar to our national productions that we do on the field. I want it to feel the same, look the same, because in the end, it's entertaining and it's a lot of fun. And I want the simmers to feel that way too when they do it.
Perfect.
I agree 100%. That's exactly what we want to do with it too.
I've had a look at that scenery, and it is fantastic. I like that your sponsored bulletin boards are there on the side of the airport buildings. The people are there behind the fence. There's even drinks on the picnic tables, and you can zoom right in and see what the brand is on there. So, there's some really attention to detail. But, speaking more towards the actual competition, the way the grass, the lines on the grass and the markers on the grass are laid out with the foot markers and all the rest, and even seeing some of the extra people standing on the sides was actually, the judges or the people that are measuring the distances are all there. So it's exciting to see that, and anyone can have access to that scenery at any time right now, and then go practice on their own if they wish, and then come to your stream, and then they've already got the scenery to go with it. Let's shift a little to the Johnson's Farm one. So what was the purpose of having the two sceneries? One just for Johnson's Farm for practice, because it's the same kind of layout, right? As far as the lines on the ground go, beside the actual runway?
Yes. And real quick, I'd like to give a little shout out to Stoyer too, because Anov was working on a lot of these 3D events or 3D things, and found that that was quite the task to do. So Stoyer actually did all of the placement and all the groundwork, everything at Music City. So now to go backwards to Anov's Johnson's Farm, that's where kind of my idea for this started, because I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I was really looking for somewhere to do this. I had started watching National Stole. It started with a Steve Henry short, and I was like, wow, I did not know airplanes could do this, because I mean, I used to fly helicopters. I went to school about my last flight was 10 years ago. Um, and so I really wasn't interested in fixed wing at all, but that's really what started. It was really that yellow Highlander that kind of started my interest in STOL in general. So I was looking for someplace, and I saw this Anov Johnson's Farm. I knew Anov a bit, and he was looking for someone to. I mean, he created literally. You could ask him right now, and he would tell you he created that so someone would pick it up and create STOL competitions. That's because he's not a streamer. He's strictly does scenery and things like that. So I didn't know that that's what he made it for, but I picked it up and we started doing these little makeshift competitions there with maybe 3 or 4 guys, and it just grew into this what we have now with collaboration with Tom and National Stole.
Is it true that I mean, I read the history about that too. It was good that you put the history of Johnson's Farm in on flightsim.to, because then you could read more about it, or at least there's a link to the history of it. And it's fascinating how that evolved. Now, I think that when he made that scenery, it was actually covered in water at the time. I think he had to clear out the water, in sim, clear out the water, make it into what it is. And that is fascinating that he would actually do all of that. And so when you first fly in, as soon as I got out about 2 miles away from it, I couldn't find it again. So I really had to, circle back, do my reciprocal heading. Tom, you know what this is like in real life, right? Just go back the way you came and just see if you can find it again. And there enough, I could see just the 2 ruts of the main landing strip, and then there, of course, beside it is the white lines so that you can see the landing part. So I would bet that happens in e-STOL, and maybe even in real life, where they might do their circuit too wide or something and they can't actually find it. But I would think they just look for the trailers, from Music City, they would just look for the trailers, look for the people, and maybe they would find it that way. But at Johnson's Farm, when I did it in the sim, there was nobody there. So it was very hard to find, right? I had a hard time getting back to it. But it was fascinating to do that. And it can certainly be a lot of fun to be challenged to try and do that kind of landing, that precision.
So there
They
is
don't always-
actually.
Good.
So there is actually for Johnson's Farm, it is just the plain scenery with no crowd or anything. But actually, Anov's hard at work right now, probably at the very moment, working on an add-on pack for that, because that was our first scenery. We didn't Anov's first scenery, we didn't have that idea. We didn't have any sponsors. We didn't have National Stole. We didn't have any of these things. And and so now that we have all these things, we want to add all that into there. We want to give credit to the sponsors. We want to make sure National Stole's is there, right? So we're going to bring National Stole there with an add-on to Johnson's Farm, similar to what they do with the Kosh Airport for Oshkosh event. So people have the Oshkosh Airport, and then somebody has made an add-on where it brings in all the tents and things like that. Yeah. So we're going to bring it to life for the very first competition, and the big one, just to out of appreciation for Anov, and that was kind of our plan, is to our plan from the beginning was to have the big competition at Anov's Johnson's Farm. So we'll start the kickoff event there, which will lead into the league events and the rest of the sceneries that are in the works for the National Stole events, where we will bring those to life.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And
go ahead, Tom.
To roll back a little bit, Howard, one of the things you mentioned was finding the airport. And while it's not too hard to find the airport because of all the trailers and all the tents and people, the biggest complaint we have is not being able to find the line. They can't see the white line when they're a quarter mile away from it trying to find it. So if you notice in the videos, we put up cones, we put up feather flags, we try to basically mark out that white line so they can see it from a distance no matter what. And so that's kind of one of our challenges in real life, because you're trying to hit a mark and you can't see the mark until you're basically right up on it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. You can't even just having someone stand there, it doesn't necessarily mean you can see them from a distance. Right on.
Correct.
So in your scenery, you can easily do that, right? I do notice in your scenery, you do have a big, it's sort of like a big red bumper or a big red and yellow bumper, if I remember, at that start line. And the start line is thicker, but it is flat on the ground. But those bumpers do rise up a bit. So maybe that helps. But maybe actually a
Yes.
flag, maybe the 6-foot flag at both ends, at both sides.
Yes.
Right?
And we have those feather flags too. Anov is creating those as well.
Nice.
So that was one thing that I really like about. I didn't know this about why they have them there, but that's neat to know from Tom there. But we're bringing them in just for at this point it was just for the aesthetic look of the feather flags, and they look really nice. But now I guess we'll be using them in the sim for the same reason they use them in real life, which is cool to know that actually.
That's great.
For visibility.
I think it's really authentic to be able to have a resource like Tom, who's there living it and understanding it, and he's a pilot. So I think this is a great resource that you have, the two of you together, working on this endeavor, because you can do a reality check along the way. It isn't just something that you're imagining or hoping that works, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool to have that resource with both of you. So some of the questions, the last few questions that I had were about the dates coming up. You've mentioned already that it's early October, but you haven't got a firm date yet for the actual competition on your Twitch stream, right?
Yeah, we don't have an actual date, because we want to make sure that we have enough volunteers, first of all. That's one of the big things. So, and we got to make sure everybody's schedule matches up, because Anov and Steuer are in Anov in Switzerland and Steuer in Germany. So we have to really make sure that we accommodate for everybody's schedules. Tom is a busy guy. He works a full-time job. Super helpful, by the way. Unbelievable how quick Tom will answer a question, mid East-Hole competition. And I'm like, hey, Tom, when the tires touch the grass, do you guys, how do you work a scratch, right? Because we didn't know that for sure. And Tom answered while we were in the competition. So as busy as he is, he's still very, very helpful. So that's great. But also, with everybody's schedules, we got to make sure Tom can do, part of the production until, we're able to get someone to learn that with him and maybe take it and help in that aspect. But there's a lot of different things that we need to get together. So hopefully we can do it in October, early October to mid-October. And once we get everybody's schedule locked in, then we'll have a date here. And I imagine that'll be in the next couple days.
Super.
And what you'll see is that once the first date comes out, the next one will come pretty quickly afterwards. It just, we want to make sure we got the bugs ironed out before we announce the second, third, fourth, fifth, so on.
Right.
And those will be all broadcast as well on nationalstol.com and our YouTube National Stol series. So any of the viewers that like National Stol series, I'm hoping to bring over to Flight Simulator. People that may not realize that Flight Simulator is a resource for this can go home and download the software and set up a sim in their house and join along. That's my goal, is bring more people to Flight Simulator.
That's that's important, and I did want to say I've seen a picture of inside your production trailer, Tom, and I can see that he's got more screens than most people, and that's why he can answer right away, Burstix, because he could just zing that off while he's still watching all his production screens. So that's quite a like that production facility. You've got a whole studio right there that's mobile. It's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
So the national Stol competition dates, do you happen to know those?
Yeah. The next National Stol Series competition date is the Lone Star Stol in Sulphur Springs, Texas on November 3rd and 4th. That is a Friday, Saturday. And that'll be our series championship as well. So the season championship for the year, it'll be there in Sulphur Springs, Texas, at Legend Aircraft. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be fantastic. Is that
the same place where the Lone Star Museum is? Is that the same airport?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But it's we previously were in Gainesville, Texas, which was a lovely airport. We're shifting over to Sulphur Springs because we believe that the support we'll get from Legend Aircraft will be phenomenal. and they're going to help us out with dinners, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Beautiful. That's great. And we'll be tuning into that for sure. And then we can see a lot of people already watch that, and now they're going to be excited that we'll be able to see this in Flight Simulator. So this is fascinating, you guys, and the way that you're recreating it to make it real is just amazing. Tom, you're a pilot in real life. What's your flight simulation background?
So I started flying when I was on Flight Simulator when I was about 8 years old, and I was sitting in my dad's office. I think it was FS 95 or FS 4.1, one of the early versions, flying around Meigs Field, and I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed it as a kid, and so when I turned 12 years old, I started taking flight lessons, but I wasn't taking them at any regularity. I was probably taking them once every 6 months, once every 4 months, and in between doing that, I was flying on FS 95, FS 98, and FS 2000 as we slowly evolved into better and more complex flight simulators. What I was seeing was when I was actually going and doing the flight training, is my instructor was like, "You're not losing your competency of what you've been doing, even though you're not flying every 6 months. You're not losing that skill." And I really attribute that. And the skills that we learn in the sim are transferable. They're not completely transferable, but they are transferable. And so in between my lessons, I got I soloed at 16. I got my pilot's license at 17. And then later on, got my instrument at 19. And I think really the instrument part was really easy to me because of how transferable Flight Simulator is in the instrument environment, especially to real life, because you're flying by your gauges, especially in the earlier flight simulators. You couldn't look around the cockpit, so you're stuck on the gauges and really not looking outside very much. And so I felt that was a really important thing in my life was doing Flight Simulator, which then got me into other aspects of it, like VATSIM, to learn the air traffic control side of it as well. So it's very important to how I learned to fly.
That's an important part. That's interesting background too. That's what you're going to see with a lot of new people coming to the sim. That same progression where they get sparked by what happens. Meigs Field was it. All of us were devastated when they plowed the field, and they got rid of Meigs Field, because that was what a lot of us learned to fly on. We went to Midway, we went to O'Hare, we came back to Meigs and landed, and we can still do that now in the sim because Microsoft put it back in. Even before that, we found scenery that put Meigs back just because we wanted it back, and we did group flies to Meigs Field. And some people didn't know the significance of that, but something like 15 million pilots grew up on Meigs Field in the flight simulator back in the early days, right? So I can see what you're saying there. We're going to see that same kind of spark now with people coming to these STOL competitions, right?
And my only request, if we can fill it in, is to do a plug for volunteers. I love volunteers at our events. We feed them, we house them, and they're how we survive. I mean, bringing people to be line judges. I've had so many people tell me I came to be a volunteer because I thought it was cool. I watched it. I got involved. Now I'm a pilot. I was nothing when I came out the first time, and now I'm a pilot. I got my license and I got my ratings and stuff like that, and I want to go do this. So I really, if I could plug that at all, I'd appreciate it. Is I want to bring in as many volunteers as we can to show them aviation up front and close and personal, and show them how we can tie into this is a attainable goal in your life. That it's not, you don't need to spend $150,000 to get your rating. It can be as cheap as you want it to be. You can buy an airplane. It's not that expensive. You can buy a $15,000 airplane right now, or even cheaper. But I think people think that aviation is expensive, and it's unobtainable. And so as much as we can to get people out to the events to explain to them, hey, this is obtainable. You can do this. If you want to follow your dream and be a pilot, you can be a pilot. So that's something I'd like to plug if we can. If not, I understand totally. One of my focuses as a producer and director for the production at the competitions is I want to really inspire people to fly. And in the way we do, or the way you do, really, Twitch streams where you interact with the users, interact with the people talking in the chat, we do the same thing. Our announcers are reading the chat, and they're talking just like they would be on a Twitch stream. And the reason why is because just like that, we bring people into stuff that watch this show and say, what is this? How does this work? And our announcers are sitting there explaining it to them on the stream, because they're not the only ones asking the question or think about asking the question. There's other people at home watching that don't know how to ask the question. And so then they'll ask, how do I get involved in aviation? And the announcer will talk to them about it. And I really, is inspiring to me to bring more people into aviation and to really feed the general aviation pilot space, because there isn't a huge pilot space in general aviation right now. We're seeing a huge demand from the airlines, and GA is shrinking as it continues to shrink. The more pilots we can bring into general aviation, the better. And that's really been our goal from day one.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's amazing, you guys. The background and the information that you're providing is just, it's going to make it's going to be hard to figure out how to pare a story down into a right size, because there's so much information there. But it's fantastic. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to talk about, or anything else to finish up that you'd like to say that I haven't even thought about saying?
One of the things I mentioned is really inspiring people to become pilots. And from day one, that's been our motivation. And so if you're thinking about this stuff's interesting to me, I want to learn more about it. If people come out and volunteer at our events as line judges, as crowd control, and just watch the event, you'll be up close with the pilots. You'll be up close watching the airplanes. I really want to inspire people to see that up close and realize that aviation is obtainable. All the stuff that we do there's always the $1 million airplanes, but what we're doing is stuff that's obtainable airplanes that can be cheap, that anyone can afford. And if you come out to the events, you'll see that firsthand. A lot of pilots will give rides. They really want people to enjoy aviation and general aviation, get into it. And, to inspire somebody to come out and be volunteers with us and become a pilot, that's what it's all about. And so if you have any interest in aviation and you're near Texas in November 3rd and 4th, and you want to come see it firsthand, please email us, call us. I'll give you free tickets. Come volunteer with us. And I want you to really enjoy the show and to hopefully inspire you to become a pilot.
Super. Now there's an offer. You're going to get a crowd. So that's good.
That's perfect.
That's good. Okay, so I think that's about it, you guys. It's such an interesting topic. We could just go on for another hour, but we better be mindful of everybody's time here. Tom, I did want to ask, when you're doing production, are you actually streaming of some sort? Because you mentioned chat, right? So you're doing the live events, but are you actually streaming it on Twitch or something, or YouTube, or how's that working?
We stream to YouTube, to Facebook, and occasionally to Twitch.
Oh, I see.
At National STOL Series on all three of them. And we're monitoring the chat on YouTube primarily. We also monitor the comments on Facebook. A little bit harder, but we do monitor those. And if we find good comments, we put them on stream. They show up right on our broadcast, and we'll answer questions as people ask the questions.
Oh, that's cool.
And our goal is to be very, very interactive with the crowd, with the audience, and to talk back and forth as we go through our competition.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating what you guys are doing. Well, I think.
And I would like to add, to that, if you go and watch the National STOL competitions and you pay close attention to what they're doing, watch their flaps, watch when they're taking off, watch when they're, rotating, watch all these things, you can learn so much because it's very, very translatable. So if you're not to the point yet where, real life aviation is maybe something that, maybe you're just a simmer, but if you watch those events, you can learn so much and become really good at the sim events as well. So if you're more on the sim side, and definitely check out those events, because you can learn. That's how I learned how to fly STOL, really, just watching YouTube videos of IRL pilots doing it, and the help along the way from many sim pilots and IRL pilots alike. But yeah, definitely if just make sure to watch those and really pay attention, because you can learn so much from watching the real competitions.
For sure, and that's how a lot of people are learning. Yeah, I would say about 50% of a lot of simmers in Twitch, about 50% are pilots, and the other 50% have never touched an airplane in real life, but they are getting so good at it. So they're watching closely and they're learning from others. So they'll be watching this stuff for sure, and they'll be learning how the techniques, and you'll see them stepping up. Some of them do end up going and saying, "I got to do this for real." You're going to see that spark happen, right? Like you were mentioning, Tom, too. Yeah, fascinating, you guys. Are there sponsors and or giveaway prizes during your competition?
So I just wanted to mention some of the sponsors for our kickoff event. So we have Got Friends doing the placement prizing. We have Parallel 42 with an entire scenery library plus one unreleased scenery that Edson is probably hard at work on. We have Big Radials. They're going to do a plane giveaway, pilot experience sim another plane giveaway. Orbix is going to be giving away some items. Sim Market is going to be giving away some items. A2A is going to be in with a Comanche giveaway, which Tom actually did have Comanche in one of his real life STOL competitions, which is why we thought to, add A2A and ask them if they would do this. So that's pretty exciting. And then Flyboy simulations with 3 Rands S6Ss. And so it's going to be people that compete are going to be able to win prizing, and then also viewers. We want to make sure that we take care of the viewers because not everybody's going to want to compete. But there's going to be quite a few viewers. What we've seen is there's always going to be more viewers than people that compete. So it'll be really good for everybody, and hopefully we can get all these things given away before the competition ends, because I think maybe we'll have to stay live a little bit longer. But I just want to say thanks to all the sponsors who are doing this for the community. They're all great for the GA STOL community. So I just want to say thanks to those guys.
Beautiful. That's perfect. I'll say this, you've got a bigger lineup than most streamers would have for an event. Usually we get 1 or 2 sponsors for most of our events. You've got this whole lineup of a lot of prizes to give away. You're going to have to figure out your timing for those prizes.
Yeah.
While things are happening. Yeah. So you've got your hands full, Burstix. That's for sure, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I'm excited about it. And I just, I think everybody's excited about it. Just as, when I talk to you guys, I think people really like GA and STOL. So, in the idea of bringing the two together. So just as, I didn't have any trouble, getting a hold of any of these guys. Everybody was excited about doing it. Everybody's excited about when is the date? When are we going to,
right.
So it's super exciting.
That's cool. And then all the stuff leading up to it. Well, let's get some people up to your Sundays so we can get practicing. That's for sure. Yep,
definitely.
Okay, guys, that's it. We'll close it from here, and we appreciate your time on here for sure.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to this interview session. I'm Howard Porter for FS News.